All right, man. We back on our podcast where the X's and O's meet real world experiences. I'm your co-host Richard Daniels.
I'm your other host, Rodney White. Coach, thank you so much for joining our podcast. We definitely appreciate it. First of all, Coach, it's an honor to have you on the podcast. You are our first college coach to be on our podcast, so that's definitely great. My first couple, if you've seen our first episodes, was more like high school coaches, but we're so honored to have you on here, man, and give your input about the college level. So we're excited to have you. Want to give you your flowers. The first thing we do on our podcast, and everybody that joins our podcast, is it's hard being a coach. We high school coaches, so that's crazy. But we can just imagine how hard it is being a college coach. I know you deal with a lot of stuff, especially like NIL, transfer portal, just all kind of crazy stuff you probably deal with, Coach. So definitely want to give you your flowers for what you have done so far. 14 years in the college level coaching, that's amazing. I hope I get no help. I think me and Rich probably the same way. We'd love to get an opportunity to coach college. So shout out to what you're doing so far, Coach, and all success on your seasons coming up.
I appreciate it, man. I'm excited to get on here. Obviously, I've watched some episodes you guys have done. You guys have had some awesome guests, some guys actually that have coached me. Monty Gray was one of my assistant coaches at high school. So, I'm excited to be on, man. I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah. So Griff, just kind of tell us a little bit. Obviously, 14 years. I'll read a little bit off, about your accolades. You were able to start coaching at your alma mater, which is amazing. A lot of people don't get a chance to do that, but I know that's a special thing because, for 4 years you get to, pour your blood, sweat, and tears into a program. And then obviously you get to come back and help coach for a few years. You got a chance to coach at, the Division III level. Then we turn around and you do a year at Winston-Salem State. I think you coached at Lander for a year, Mount Olive, and then you're able to get to Presbyterian. Tell us, just about your journey in the coaching level and what made you kind of go into that right after school, or what made you, want to take that career as soon as you finish playing.
Yeah. So, in the recruiting process, like when I was coming out of high school, one of the biggest things for me was I wanted to pick a coaching staff that was like invested in me, like beyond playing basketball. Right. So my dad and me, like we kind of formulated this, when my recruitment started to kind of settle on the schools that I was, going to visit. That was kind of like our game plan was like, well, look, if basketball continues after college, great. If not, like, who's going to help me become a college basketball coach? And John Thompson at North Carolina Wesleyan, he laid out like this plan for me. And it's funny, I was just at his coach's clinic this past weekend, and to this day, coach has like been nothing but instrumental in terms of like helping me navigate the business. But I did everything coach asked me. I worked camps in the summer when I wasn't in summer school at Wesleyan, when I was able to land a job right out of college. So, and then it just, ever since then, I've just been kind of, working and going. But, you spoke a little bit about, coaching at your alma mater. It was cool for me because I got to go off and get some experience before I came back to Wesleyan. And then being able to like win a championship there, not only as a player and a coach for Coach Thompson. I mean, I can't honestly, like, that's like some of my like favorite, basketball moments have been through Wesleyan. So I just, Coach Thompson means the world to me. He's been really good to me. And I owe a lot of my coaching success and my journey to him.
As far as, starting at the D3, what do you, I guess, coming from a player, how was the transition in the beginning? And this is just, we just kind of just talking right now, but I know even for us as, players, when you transition to coaching, you find out that it's way different. Like it's a whole different side. When you were when you were a younger coach, like fresh out of college, what was the difference in, you being a player and then you being on that opposite side?
So, it was interesting. My senior year, we scrimmaged Mount Olive in the fall, and then fast forward 11 months later, I'm coaching at Mount Olive, fresh out of college, and the guy that I work for, who's now the AD at Mount Olive, Joey Higginbottom, he took a chance on me because I was young. I had a lot of passion and I was excited to try to be a college coach. And when I went down there and interviewed and he offered me the job, I jumped on top of the opportunity. But I had played against guys, in a scrimmage that now I was coaching. There was a guy who is now the high school coach at Myers Park named Dory Hines, who I coached for 2 years. his final two choices were Wesleyan and Mount Olive. And I gave him, I walked him around campus on his visit at Wesleyan, and now I had to coach him. So I think, one thing I've been fortunate enough to have is like good feel. So I knew in my early part of my career, I was going to make my mark with player development and being there for the guys and being able to like be a positive reinforcement, and not really try to be a jump on top of you disciplinary type of guy. Now, where I'm at in my career now is a little bit different, but early on I was more so just trying to reinforce what my boss wanted and just, try to work the guys out and just be in the gym with them as much as possible.
Yeah. Rod, let's go ahead and get into the first question.
Absolutely, which is a great question. Coach, what is the different process in being a D3 coach, D2 coach, and also a D1 Division I coach? Like, how is that recruiting process? Like, what's the difference in those three levels of college basketball?
Yeah, so I'll start with the Division III. Like the Division III process, depending on where you are, I would say, it's because the way that the stuff is structured. I think one misconception people get with Division III, is that you take out like every school you have to pay all this money. When in reality, it just depends on the school and your the stuff that you get from the FAFSA, right? So I would say the biggest difference for Division III is you're casting a wider net. You're going to contact a lot more kids. You're trying to find the guys that line up and check. There's a lot more boxes that have to be checked, and then finding guys that fit. I will tell all the parents, if there's any like parents that listen to this, like, if your son is getting recruited at that level, before you turn a nose up to it, you need to go watch a game. Like you need to go in person and watch a Division III basketball game live, because I've coached pros at every level that I've coached at 3, 2, and 1. Guys that have went on to play, guys like a guy we had named Damon McDowell, who was at North Carolina Wesleyan with us. He was a 2-time All-American, 25 points a game, 50, 40, 90 guy. And Dame could play for us at Presbyterian right now. I wouldn't even believe that. But so I think the Division III guys, they recruit more regionally. Division II, I think obviously you started getting into more like the athletic scholarship stuff. I think sometimes people get kind of fooled with the notion about, it's just like a full scholarship, when in reality, most Division IIs, they're gonna do what we call stack money, where they're gonna take the academics, they're gonna take your financial aid, and then they're gonna dump the basketball money on top of it. Both those levels, like there's not any summertime access at the school. Division I is a full-time gig. Our players are on campus every week except about 6 weeks, the entire year. Them guys, they put in a lot of work. Our guys just moved into campus yesterday. So, it's a full-time gig, and there it's scholarship. If you get any money from the federal government, you're keeping that. Division I stuff, like our roster, like the rosters I coached at the Division III and Division II level, there was some guys from like our region. Our roster at Wesleyan, we got guys from Memphis, we got guys from Texas, Presbyterian, we got guys from Texas, from Florida, North Carolina. So, like we have guys from pretty much all over the country. We had a guy from Chicago last year. So, we're recruiting nationally. We're going to go to the Adidas stuff. We're going to go to EYBL. And we're going to, so it's more of a national recruiting search to find players for that level.
Yeah. It's interesting, man, because as high school coaches, myself and Rod, like we're trying to get this information to parents. And I think sometimes maybe they don't think we know what we're talking about, or, they may think maybe we're not telling the truth. But I've told parents a lot of times at this point, whether it's, Division I, Division II, Division III, it's tough to get scholarships because basketball is universal now. Like there's no more, even when we were playing, Division III guys were good. You just didn't have the access to social media to really know. But like now, you can get a kid that may transfer from D1 to go D3 just to play, just to get numbers up, or whatever. And so basketball is universal, man. So it's very tough for the high school kids right now. And I know it's tough for you guys because, there may be some kids that's right there on the bubble, but you got to go with first, winning, which is very important. And that's getting the right players in there. So if you're not college ready at the high school level, more times than not, you're not going to get that, get that scholarship.
Yeah. It's different. I think every program is different, but I think the mass majority of college basketball is just wants to be old, It's the easier way to do it. And, guys that have been battle tested, they're practice tested, that way. And it's not that we don't take all transfers. I mean, like every year I've been at Presbyterian, we've signed multiple high school kids. We've had guys, that have played as freshmen. I mean, example, we had a kid named Corey Minty who came in with us who had one Division I offer. He made the all freshman team, played sophomore year, was an all league player, went to George Mason, all conference player, and now he's going to be at South Carolina in the fall. So, I think it looks differently for everybody, but, there's never been a harder time for high school kids, just not only from the standpoint of the portal, but the international stuff. I mean, there's guys at every level now because they're allowing these older international kids to come in, guys that have been playing professionally over there, however that looks, to come in and play in the college level. So, I mean, if there's opportunity for you to play, you gotta try to take advantage, and then just look at it from wherever you land to kind of just keep working to get better.
Yeah. What is and I know we kind of talking about it now. What are some common misconceptions that the high school players and parents have in the difference in the levels of playing, or the levels, Division I through Division III, NAIA, JUCO? What are some misconceptions, that you've, been a part of, or that you've heard in your coaching journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some of the biggest misconceptions are just everybody gets Division I or bust mentality.
Yeah.
And I think that's a dangerous mentality to have, especially in this climate. I think you can miss your blessing, so to speak, when it comes to basketball, because there's players at every level. And I look at things more so from programs versus just levels, because there's teams that I coached at North Carolina Wesleyan that would have beat a lot of Division II teams. I mean, the teams that I coached at Mount Olive that won championships, the teams that I coached at Lander, the team that I had at Winston-Salem State, our second leading scorer was a guy that scored 1,000 points at Gardner Webb and transferred to us at Winston-Salem State just because he wanted to play at Winston for his last year. So, I think you got to look at it through that scope. I mean, there's Division III programs out there, Hampton-Sydney, Randolph-Macon, the North Carolina Wesleyans, the Guilfords, when Coach Palumbo was there, like those guys can go toe to toe with a lot of good Division II programs and even some Division I. So, I think that people that get caught up in the notion of that, you got to be careful. I mean, one of my former players is a kid named Mike Moore who played for us at Mount Olive, had one scholarship offer. Mike's about 6'8". Mike's playing in Russia. He's making a lot of money, and he's playing at a high level. He played in the summer league for the Brooklyn Nets. And I say all that to say, like, if you're good enough, it doesn't matter where you go. Like, they're going to find you. But, people that, even in this transfer portal era, I think people get caught up so much in, Division I and going and getting the money. But where are you going to be able to show your ability and keep the main thing? Because if you're ultimately the end goal is to be a pro, well, you might be a really good player at Division II, but you go up to the wrong mid-major Division I, and now you're averaging 6 points a game in your senior year, and now your pro career looks nothing like it would have if you would have stayed at the Division II school.
Right.
Because ultimately, if you're productive, I mean, they're going to come find you, and the opportunities are going to present themselves.
I definitely agree with you, Coach, on that, because I played at a small Christian college, and I know Rich played D2, I know you played D3, like so. And when I got to the Christian college, I was like, I'm about to just dominate. I'm about to be the best player here. And we went down to Florida and we played against a school, and they had like 2 7-footers, and I'm like, this is Christian college. Like, why y'all ain't in the D3 or D2? Or maybe they haven't just been seen yet or recruiting the right way yet. But it opened my eyes up to what you just said. It don't matter where you play at, you're gonna run into some dogs. Like, dogs is gonna be dogs wherever school you go to. Christian college, no matter if you go to chapel on Tuesdays, you're gonna run into some dogs. And me being on the level I played at, I run into some really, really good players that I thought I was gonna go out and just dominate every night, but it wasn't like that, because like I remember playing against Montreat, which is an NAIA school. They had some killers. I'm like, it's just dogs wherever you go, man. So that's definitely true. I agree with you on that, Coach. When it comes down to the transfer portal, Coach, how do you benefit from that from your roster? How's that changing your roster every year? Because I know kids are trying to transfer in or transfer out. Like, how did that help you guys in your program?
Yeah, so I'll say, like, the transfer portal, I think, is utilized differently for everyone. And I think for us, it's a year-to-year thing. My first year at PC, like I got there in the fall. We had already started workouts and stuff. I got that job really late when I got to PC, and we had a season it was a rough season the first year I was here. But the transfer portal, because of that, we were able to go in the portal and land 4 transfers that were guys that really elevated our program. A kid named Jamari Harvey, who played at UNC Wilmington, Samaj Till, that played at Winston-Salem State, Caleb Scott, who was at Georgia State, who's from the Raleigh area, and then a kid named Jonah Pierce, who actually just graduated for us and ended up being a first-team All-League player. But I say that to say, like, we went from a team that was struggling and was the bottom of our league. The next time we played, those guys were on the court, we go beat Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. So I think that's kind of, the beauty of the transfer portal. Now, I'll say on the flip side of the transfer portal, we've had guys like the kid Corey Mincy that I mentioned, who we put a lot of time and effort into, who transferred. Samaj was with us for a year. He goes to Indiana State. He becomes a first-team All-League player. So that's the other side of it. I think, a lot of coaches just complain about it. I embrace it in the recruiting stuff, and like NIL money is here, and that stuff's not going to change. But I still think what the main thing is the main thing, like the relationships and the culture. Like, we retained 10 guys this season on our roster. Several of them could have left and went and pursued other opportunities. But ultimately, what those guys decided is, they're going to be compensated in some way here, but they, their opportunity to play and what we've done, and then the culture that our coaching staff has cultivated at Presbyterian, was able to keep them guys there. So I think the portal, there's good and bad to it. I'm not one to sit there and complain about it, though. It's like, my thing, if you're going to complain about it, then you probably need to do something else, because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Is there while we on this subject, is there an expectation that everything is a 1-year deal? Because I know, before it's like, okay, I'm going to go to school for 4 years. I'm going to graduate, I'm going to get my degree. But like the way that the portal has changed everything, is there an expectation for the coaches and the players that we on a 1-year contract basis?
Yeah. I think it's from program to program. I know some programs that definitely operate that way. Quentin Farrell, my boss at Presbyterian, he does a really good job of like getting guys to understand, like, when you commit to my program, I commit to you, and we're going to take this thing and we're trying to get as good as we can. We're trying to achieve goals. We're trying to make your dreams come true. He gets more into the individual accolade stuff, probably more than any head coach that I've coached, in terms of like, he just feels like if we can produce the best players and help guys achieve the dreams of pro, that's going to ultimately make we got good players. But I say that to say, we've never told a kid who could better his situation not to go. If it makes sense, if it's a life-changing opportunity, fine. But if it's a situation where it's like a shortcut to get some quick money, and then the basketball stuff doesn't make sense, like, we're going to lay that out there for you too. We're going to present it, just as honest as we can. But we don't operate in the 1-year spectrum. We try to, we want guys that want to be around, but obviously, that's not realistic that everybody's going to stay. But the guys, like I say, like Corey, me and Corey still have a great relationship. We speak, often. I helped him and, navigate some of his stuff when he went back in the portal and he left George Mason. He just called, asked for advice. So he came back to campus on his spring break and was just hanging out and came and saw us and stuff. So we maintain good relationships with our guys. Same with Samaj. So I think, again, when you're in it for the right reasons, like, the kids leave, it's fine, but they're still, they're a part of what we did. So, I maintain the relationship. So.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as evaluating talent, because I know it's tough, I've called you sometimes and like, hey man, if you get a chance to be down here for such and such, can you check this kid out? When you're evaluating, what is it that you look for? As far as, your prospect, you got the talent, character, work ethic, basketball IQ. Like, what is it that you guys are looking for when you're evaluating a kid that you're seriously talking about recruiting?
Yeah. So I think, the first thing, there's a difference between you're being evaluated and you're being recruited. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of guys that are being evaluated. Schools are talking to you. You're getting, a text message, you're getting, whatever. So you're getting evaluated. But a lot of people, they'll start talking about the intangible stuff, but the reality is like the first and foremost thing is talent. Like you got to be good enough. Like there's a lot of guys that are good enough to play at all levels of college basketball, but what separates you and what determines your level a lot of times is your size, and then, shooting, ball handling, all that stuff, and then your intangibles. So for me, guys got to be good teammates. Once we've established you're a good enough player, you got to be a great teammate because like this game is so predicated on everybody needs everybody. So, body language and that type of stuff is big for me. The next thing I look at is guys that are competitive. Like I want guys that are ultra competitive that, like if like it might bother some coaches if a guy gets like a technical, but I want to see some asshole. I want to see a dog out there.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
guy that plays with some passion and some edge to him. That brings a lot of energy. It's a self starter. I mean, those things are important for me. And then the toughness piece, because again, like if you got the talent, those other things can make up for a lot. Whether like, okay, maybe you're not as athletic, but if you got a high motor, you got a high care factor. I mean, those guys, the ones that have that stuff in them, I mean, they're special. I mean, they get the most out of their ability. So, and then other thing is, just having conversations with guys like y'all. If you're a high school coach, man, I gotta kick this kid out of the gym. That's a green light. If it's a guy, man, he don't really love being in the gym, like that's not good because it's all, at our level, like we talked about earlier, like if you don't love it, you won't survive the
yeah,
division.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a big thing. Me and Rod, we talk about this, and we going to go into team camp this summer.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're gonna be complaining about it. Getting kids to play hard and realize that playing hard is now considered a skill.
Yeah.
Because like that's what separates a lot of kids. There's some talented kids that's just out there just kind of nonchalant. You know what I'm saying? Like they just going through the motions and it ain't but so many scholarships available. And I don't think they realize like you play hard, that kind of separates you now.
Yeah, I hate to be that old guy like back in my day, but the reality is like playing hard was like a non-negotiable for
Yeah,
so long. I mean, like I just think about like my high school coach Andy Muse. Like
yeah,
I love Coach Muse, but I've watched like just how times have changed and like he can't coach us. I feel like the same way he coaches these kids, and it's
no,
kind of
absolutely not.
I think that has somewhat of it now is like, I mean, we were demanded to play hard or it was going to be a price to
Yeah,
pay.
yeah,
But again, I think, for kids now, I just think they have so many distractions. But playing hard, man, like, if you want to be a college basketball player, like it's hard to like recruit a guy that doesn't have a motor unless you just have like unbelievable amount of talent.
yeah,
And that's, I mean, like, that's the reality. Like, there's guys that are willing to make the exception for those guys when they just have that much talent. But, if you're a guy that's fighting and scrapping to get recruited, like, I mean, that's like the price of admission is to play
yeah,
hard.
yeah.
I had a kid on my team this year scored 1,500 points. And I remember one day we entered practice a little early, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna get the gun out. Guys want to get up shots." And he the first one stuff on, and he's like our main guy. And I'm like, "You don't want to get up?" I'm doing it really because of him. Like, you don't get no shots up. He like, "Coach, I'm out, man. I'm gonna go holler at my girl." I'm like, it's just different, man. It's just a different wave of kids. And he's a great kid, smart kid. He's going to Wake Forest for academic, and he has some D3s. And he kind of just like, "Coach, I don't want to play D3. I don't want to play college ball. I just play high school because all my friends played." I'm like, oh, okay. It's just tough as high school coaches that we put more into the kids that we like. No, this kid can play, and it's like they don't even like. They're like, "Man, I'm just gonna go to school." You
What
like,
what do y'all think is the reason? Because I've had this conversation plenty of times where kids get to their senior year, they finally going through the recruiting process, coaches working hard, trying to get them out there, and then they just like, "Coach, I don't want to play no more." Like, what do you think the reason is that these kids don't want to go play basketball no more, or play sports in general?
I think they get burned out. To be honest, I think some kids has been good for a long period of time. I think sometimes their parents push them to play the sport, and I think realistically, these kids mentally just don't want to. They don't want to. They don't want to play. They okay with being a great high school player, and that's it. But then you also have other kids that really, really want to play and just ain't, like Coach said, the talent got to be there. And sometimes the talent just ain't, it don't match up to where these kids want to go. There's a lot of kids which we deal with. I'm going D1. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
That's my thought on it.
yeah.
Yeah. I just think there's so many things these kids are into now. Like coming up, like, basketball for us, like sports, like I think that was kind of like now, these kids pick up their phone and there's a million distractions. I think they're just pulled in a lot of different directions. But like, most high school coaches that I talk to, it's interesting. Like, I don't think guys understand like what it takes to be a college player and like that time and the effort. And I think some kids now, like that may, if they're on the fringe of it, like, and they got friends that have done it and they see like the time and the sacrifices, like, oh man, do I really want to do that with my time? And, again, if you don't, like, it doesn't matter what level you go to, like the amount of time that's committed to being a college basketball player, it dictates your schedule as a college student. So, I mean, but it's definitely, different. There's been a shift for me, I think, in probably the last like 5 years. You hear more and more about that stuff from high school coaches.
Yeah. I had a kid, I'll tell you right out, this was the first lesson I learned. I had a kid at Walkertown that was super talented. I finally got some D2s getting ready to offer him. Like, all he had to do was go to camp. And the day of camp, he was like, yeah, I don't want to play no more. I like that was the most disappointing feeling that I ever had, but it was a lesson for me. You know what I'm saying? It was like I had to kind of, you know what I'm saying, understand like maybe some of these kids going through stuff we don't know about. Or maybe we just, as coaches, we got to kind of, find out, is this something they really want to do before even doing the process? And then, from there, we can kind of go about how we coach them. So that was a lesson for me, man. But yeah, it's definitely in the last, I would say post-COVID, that's been a more of a thing. These kids just not trying to play, sports at the next level.
Coach, what advice would you give a high school kid that doesn't have any D1 interests but wants to go on the D1 level? Like, what advice would you give him?
So, I mean, I think that, there's some things that kind of make that answer different depending on like the year of the player. If it's a kid, it's like a freshman or a sophomore, like, man, you just gotta be patient. Like, you gotta keep working. If you're a guy that's like a junior or a guy that's like going into a senior year and you don't have like significant Division I interest, the reality is like it's going to be hard pressed for I to make that happen without like making some sort of like big time run in the state playoffs, or you have some just really big time year. Because a lot of the stuff now like is happening in the summer. College coaches aren't going out to watch as many high school games as they probably were, 6-7 years ago. I mean, like for me, I get out still, but not near at the rate that I did, like I said, 6-7 years ago. But I think the biggest thing is like you gotta be realistic with your opportunities. I tell guys, like the parents and the people that I've been close to, this is a different market now, and especially they're getting ready to pass this 5-for-5 rule. You gotta be able to understand like the landscape of it. And again, I don't think anybody should go into any college situation and be like, I'm here for a year and I'm bouncing. Unless you're like going to JUCO, where JUCO is designed to go there for a couple years and then you're going to transfer. But I say that, nobody knows what God has for you. So I just think kids got to be realistic about that. But in terms of getting in front of Division I coaches, elite camps get a bad rap. And I think it depends on whose camp you go to. But I'll tell you, at PC, man, we've probably signed 4 kids over the past in the past 5 years since I've been there that attended our elite camps, whether they did it as juniors or they did it as seniors, because that's the time to get in front of coaches. They're going to put you in structure. Well, at least I know for us at PC that the things that matter and the things that we want to see, and we're going to be able to evaluate that stuff. So, but definitely like coaches love guys that are interested in, but I think you got to be realistic too. Like, you can't be a kid who has no Division I interest. You're reaching out, trying to get a hold of Duke and thinking that they're just going to magically recruit you. Like that's not happening. So,
yeah,
I think, and again, just being able to lean on, like, you guys obviously have connections to college coaches, and that's a big part of it too. I mean, we're not going to waste time to go see kids that unless we know that they're good enough or somebody that we trust is they're good.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm gonna kind of add this one in. This is just kind of random. So as far as kids not having the interest but wanting to play college basketball, right? As far as even if they can't go to elite camps, obviously, some parents can't afford it. What are some other options that they can do? Like with my guys, I always tell them, find a list of realistic, schools that you want to go to. And, social media is the biggest platform, but it's tough, I guess, nowadays because everybody's doing it. What are some other options outside of, just going to the elite camps? Like, how can they get in contact with these coaches? Even if their coach, I'm gonna give another example. Their coach doesn't have connections. What would you say would be another way to kind of, get them to start reaching out to coaches and kind of trying to put themselves on the recruiting or trying to help their recruiting?
Yeah, again, I think that it's a tough one because like guys work at this, like they're out
Hmm.
there. Coaches are actively evaluating players and reaching out to people they know and connections. So, I think that's where it matters, like who you play AAU with, like the high school programs you playing and stuff, because those are the guys. Like if you're a guy, you can send your highlight tape to guys, you can DM them on X, you can send it to emails and stuff like that, and you know I get it probably every month. I probably get 100 kids that message me um,
Yeah,
across the
yeah,
different platforms, and they just, hey, coach, just want to introduce myself and this and that and stuff. And I try to respond to everybody, but that doesn't, I pride myself on like knowing like what the guys I want to get it and that stuff like that. So, but again, like you said, knowing the level you're at and then just trying to be proactive with that. But I think it's having people around you that can help, that can get in touch with coaches and put your film like where Coach Daniels knows Coach Griffith. If he sends it to Coach Griffith, like he's gonna watch it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Or
yeah,
so I think that's really the biggest thing, and just from a realistic thing, because people can tell you like these little programs that are out there to sign up for these things and do all that, but I mean, there's not. If any coach is using those, they're using them to fill roster spots, like at lower levels or JV
yeah,
teams and stuff like that. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah. That makes sense.
No, I get that all the time. Coach, I got this email from, I go put those schools on the blast, but I got this email from this school about coming to this, or they offered me a spot. I'm like, bro, it's a development spot. It's a JV development spot. Like if you want to do that, cool. If your parents, y'all cool with doing that, do it. But I don't want you to go thinking like, you gonna be on the main team or you're gonna be traveling. You probably playing about 10 games or 12, 15 games and that's it. So I get that a lot from a lot of my AU kids, and also a lot of some high school kids too. Like, oh, coach, and they get excited. I get it. You excited about getting an email from a coach, but it ain't what you think it is. So I definitely agree.
Going into our last question. Let's say, okay, this is year 14, right? So obviously now you're a vet, which is crazy because time flying. Like, until I started reading up, I realized you've been coaching for a while, but I didn't realize it's 14 years. Like that's a long time
Long time.
to be coaching basketball. What would you say are some lessons that have stayed consistent throughout your journey? Obviously, your role is increases with the school that you go to, or depending on what the culture of the coaching staff is, and what that coach may allow you to do. What are some lessons that you say have stayed consistent pretty much throughout these 14 years?
yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, along my journey, I've kind of taken different things from different places.
Hmm.
The first guy that I worked for in Mount Olive, Joey Higginbotham, he was ultra organized, and he was a really, really good player developer. I mean, we didn't have the most scholarships. We had like 6.5 scholarships at Mount Olive, but we developed our guys. They got better. We won conference championships. I mean, I didn't get to coach. Like I assembled the team and coach coached them to the Elite Eight. They won 30 something games. So, but his stuff, being really, locked in with that. The other thing he was big on is like he's a less is more guy, like just being really good at what we do and then having some things we can adjust with, but not just doing too much. My college coach, uh, how you do anything is how you do everything. Just being locked in. I think that it all goes together. I know younger kids struggle to understand that. I mean, college guys struggle to understand it, but man, how you do all your stuff matters. Like off the court, on the court, how you treat people. The way you practice, the way is you're going to play. So those things, I think those things are extremely important. You are what you emphasize. Like the guy I worked for at Lander, he just hammered to our guys defense and rebound, defense and rebound.
Yeah.
And we were one of the best defensive teams in our league. We won our league, and it was our conference tournament. The way we won the conference tournament was because we dominated the backboards and we defended the crap out of people.
Yeah.
So, of course, and then the guy I work for now, I mean, he's a guy that cares about the players. The relationships matter to him. He's a really good cultivator of relationships. Our players really love him. They love playing for him. So I think, he's a guy like where the business is kind of turned into this transactional thing. He's done, a really good job of maintaining the relationships. But, from like a basketball side of things, man, you got to have a level of toughness and you got to have a level of care factor in order to win. I mean, I think that's like the one thing for me. The teams that got toughness, competitiveness, grit, you know what I mean? That's the thing. Like when every team that's had that trait, like strongly that I've coached has won championships. And I've been fortunate because I've coached teams at every school I've been at that have done it. So I think that, that's the one thing for me. Like God blesses me one day to have my own program. Like that's what we're going to hang our hat on. Like, the things that don't take talent, if you can excel and do those things at a high level and be really, elite with that and consistent, those are the teams that win.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah, obviously, man, you kind of answered it a little bit, with the whole thing about this being transactional. I think when you see the teams that are winning on the college level now, obviously, you have Duke that has a great amount of talent. So we're not talking about like some of those programs, but like on the mid-major level or low major level, or even like Division II, those teams that have good relationships, player to coach relationships, I think that translate onto the court because, like you said, it's more of a trust factor. And I think that's basketball in general. These times, these kids are like they're more emotional. You know what I'm saying? Like way more emotional. And so while you do have a job to make them basketball players, you do have to, care about their well-being and if they got stuff going on off the court or you know what I'm saying, even just the mental health part of college basketball because for people that have never played or, played on that level, man, it's a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's a lot. I mean, it's, you're doing the same thing for months, you got, practice during the holidays where you want to be with your family and, and some of these people got, kids or you just never know. And so
I think one thing too. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that translates.
Yeah, for sure. I think the other thing too, like kids now, like they want like the explanation of like why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We're decided we're going to do this ball screen coverage. Or we're going to change from why are we doing that? Like, and I think guys like in the past, it like for us, it'd be like, man, like the coach, like, what you mean, man? That because I said so. You know what I mean? Now, because like ultimately, like to be good, like your team's got to buy in. To what we're doing. Like everybody on the roster, everybody on the coaching staff's got to be bought into what's going on. However many guys got to be pulling in the same direction. So I think, the why sometimes and giving guys that, like I know, especially like in my player development stuff that I do with our guys, giving them the explanation of why, I think it gets them to buy in quicker and then they apply it quicker because they say, okay, that's why I'm doing this. Okay. Like, and then once they see it be effective once, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we as coaches have to adapt kind of to new forms of, coaching styles. And you don't have to get away from your culture, but like you saying, when they ask why, it's not disrespectful. They really don't understand basketball. Like, Because again, they could be super talented and not have been coached or not have heard different verbiage. Like they are. This is a total different generation. So I have to sometimes like I'll just tell them, okay, we in the heat of practice. Just ask me off the court. Like don't while we're going through practice, I may be a jerk. So I may, respond a different way. But if you don't know, pull me to the side. Hey coach, why did you say XYZ? Because again, I had to understand they don't know a lot of basketball. There's not a lot of high IQ guys anymore. And some of them are just specialists. Some of them just really good at shooting. Some of them really good at just slashing. Like it's not IQ players. And so I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that. Something I want to get into that we don't really get a chance to talk about, and I don't know if we really had a chance to talk to anybody on the podcast about it. Obviously, you're in it, NIL. So if a kid is coming to Presbyterian College, what is the process of NIL? We hear a bunch of stuff. Everybody think it's just you get this big lump sum of money. You know what I'm saying? And people really have no idea because if you go to, most schools, Division 3, Division 2, they may have some, but it's not on the grand scheme of things. So coaching Division 1, how does the NIL process work for you guys?
Yeah, again, I think every program is different. For us, you know, our head coach and our staff, like we work as a team to kind of try to figure out like the roster construction and then how we're going to do what we're going to do with the money and stuff. Um, there's some programs like they're in the portal, they're fishing, they're throwing money out. The agents is the biggest thing that's really got into college basketball now.
Yeah.
Like there's some kids like you can traditionally recruit. You're going to talk to the parents, the coaches, and all that stuff. And then there's other kids that like they're just putting all on the agent. And I think some coaches, they like it that way. They just want to deal with the agents. Where, me, I like dealing with. I like getting to know the family and the parents and stuff. And again, I'll talk to any agent, as well too. But there's some negotiating that goes into that. A lot of the stuff that we do with NIL is for retention with our guys. My boss is big on like, what have you done for it? Like the program.
Mhm.
I mean, because
Yeah.
we're going to invest in every player that we have. They're going to get time in the gym. They're going to get film, all that stuff. But the guys that, we're trying to retain, like those are the guys that we try to, take care of from that standpoint. But every school is different. I mean, there's schools that are quote unquote mid majors that have more money than some high majors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think it's different, but the market demand is going to show you what your value is. I think that's the misconception. Like people try to drive the market up and do this and do that. And, that's all part of that. Cause people that do that, they get paid,
Yeah.
from that portion of it. But
Yeah.
the reality is like your market value is what it is. Like, you're going to get just like recruiting before. Like if you're a high major player, well, you're going to have high major schools with high major resources. They're going to come after you. Now, a little bit of a difference now is there are some mid majors that can sneak into the equation for a player, maybe that they can pay. But I think too, like the other thing people got to realize is not everybody on a Division 1 roster is making a bunch of money. I mean, I think now is more common. Schools are starting to go to this 8-9 man thing where they're going to front load their roster with the money for those guys, and then the other guys are just going to get a base salary, something small. And it's why you see some of these high majors taking players that are not necessarily the most decorated guys, that they're,
Mhm.
The 15th man, whatever. They're going to come in, they're going to be a good practice player, but they're ultimately there to like serve the program in that way. Like they're not there to like play big minutes or anything like that. Cause, ultimately, if you're a program that, maybe you're in the bottom half of your league in the NIL money, well, we don't need to pay the 10th guy that might play 5 minutes. We got to pay 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as much as we can to get the best 5, 6, 7 players we can get. And then everybody else has just got to, and that's where you got to be good at, with that GM hat. And that's why teams have GMs, is because you got to be able to find the undervalued, assets and guys that are willing to come and buy into those roles and not become a problem on the team. So I think, it's different. NIL has changed our game a ton in the transfer portal. I mean, it's a totally different thing than the first 10 years of my career. So
Yeah, I was looking at obviously reading on Twitter and stuff. And I'll let, Griff, I'll definitely let you kind of speak on this, and then Rod, tell me your thoughts. How do you feel about the guys that have gone and played pro that are able to come back to college? Like I look at LSU's roster, right? I think that is absurd that guys 2, 3 year pros able to come back and now play college as if, college wasn't already older. Now you're looking at a roster where the average age is 24. You know what I'm saying? Like that's tough for 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds that's normally going to college. Like, how do you feel about them allowing those pros to come back and play in college?
Yeah, so like I don't like it. I'm
Yeah.
not a fan of it. I don't like it at all. I think when guys make the conscious decision to try to become pros,
Hmm.
that that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Yeah.
understand like internationally that like why people like why this has happened because internationally like the way they structure basketball over there is very different than the way we do in the States. So um, I think that there's obviously some changes that got to be made there. I don't, but I mean, I don't like the fact that they're able to bring guys back there. But I think the misconception is that people think the NCAA is the one that's allowing it. That's really not what's happening. What happens a lot of times with these guys is they get ruled ineligible, but then they go and they do these class action lawsuits and they get these restraining orders pulled out against the NCAA so they can't enforce it. And then those guys end up going back. I mean, because that's the biggest problem in our game right now is the NCAA has really no ground to stand on in enforcing some of its
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah.
So until something is changed or there's some collective bargaining, I mean, there's going to continue to be lawsuits. I'm sure if this 5-for-5 passes, there's going to be a bazillion kids that are going to try to do some sort of class action lawsuit to try to gain eligibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's interesting. Like I said, I follow a lot of stuff on Twitter, so just seeing a lot of that stuff is like I can't imagine being an adult. You know what I'm saying? Like they older. Like you get to be 25. You're a adult. Like I was working in the school system at 21, 22. So at 25, I feel like I'm like a full adult now. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
to come back and be playing and be back on a college campus, and I just think that's crazy.
I think it's crazy. Like I see it on social media all the time, and I think that the last one I saw was the guy that came that was in the G League, and he was overseas, and then he started playing at Baylor. And I'm like, what in the world? It's just. I mean, I know life ain't fair, but I also feel like it's not fair to the kids that's in high school. It's tough, bro. It's real tough to see that. But I mean, if they can do it, they gonna keep doing it, until somebody said they can't do it. So, but I do think that's tough. Like I said, I just look at the kids that's in high school that's working hard and trying to get a Division I spot. You ain't getting it because this guy playing the G League. Now he going back to college. That's crazy, man. It's really crazy. I don't like it at all, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah, it's a lot. Griff, we had 48 minutes, man. I got, one more question, just talking about NILs and the portal and those kind of things. Do you think because these kids are getting paid a substantial amount of money, sometimes more than their assistant coaches, do you feel like there's a lack of respect for the game of basketball because there's so much other things that go into it now?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought. Like for me, I think that the game's in an interesting place. I think that we're, like for what college basketball has been and where we're kind of slowly treading. I don't. For me, like I don't love some of the stuff. I think kids should be compensated, especially at the highest levels. But name, image, and likeness was not made to be what it's become.
Yeah.
Name, image, and likeness was, C.J. Harris is at Wake Forest and he sells 100 jerseys. He's supposed to get some of that money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not this kind of pay for play thing that we've kind of dove into. But ultimately for a guy like me, like I've been fortunate because I think it only gets disrespectful if you allow it to in terms of your program. The guys that you recruit and the guys that you bring into your program, like for us, that's on us. So like if coaches are feeling that way, well, you recruited that player. And for you guys, obviously you kind of don't get to pick and choose the way that we do. So, the guys that we have in our program right now, like I can stand up and say like Like, I love the guys on our team. We got great guys. They're high character. They're hard workers. I'm super excited to be able to, see what they're going to be able to do this season on the court. But they operate with a high level of respect. And, I think that the guys that, are grounded enough, like, they understand that, like, and, ultimately, like, the NBA, that's why I wouldn't have wanted to coach the NBA, because I think, it's just strictly business. And that's where I hope our business doesn't get to a point where it just ultimately is strictly business, because, I had college coaches that greatly impacted me. They shaped me tremendously. And, that's ultimately why I still do what I do, because, we're not getting rich over here at Presbyterian, but, we are impacting guys, and we are, building relationships and trying to do things the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. Last thing, Griff, we always get piece of advice. Obviously, for somebody that may have aspirations of coaching at the next level, what's a piece of advice you would give them, whether it's, how to get, on a staff, or if they get an opportunity, like what's something that you would, like for them to know about the college, coaching at the college level?
Yeah, I say guys that want to break in, you gotta work at, like, finding an opportunity, whether that's, showing up and building relationships with coaching staffs. Because ultimately, when guys get hired, a lot of times it's somebody knows somebody and they trust that guy enough to hire you. Like, the way I got this job was, two of my good coaching friends were, they knew Quentin. One of them had just got done working for him. He recommended me. It worked out. But staffs, ultimately, a lot of times they decide, like, some head coaches, they lean on the assistants, like, hey man, like, who y'all think is going to work well? Because, at our level, like, your other assistants, coaches, like, y'all are in the trenches together. So they want to make sure that that's what that is. But, I say the college level, man, like, guys that aspire to get into it, like, you got to know why you're doing it. And you got to love the game, because it's an interesting business, man. Like, you got to sacrifice. You got to have people in your life, your family life, that are willing to sacrifice. I mean,
Yeah.
My wife, God bless her. Like, I travel a lot. My daughter, they see me a lot less than probably the average person, because, when the season starts, if we got an away game, like, we're gone the night before. And then, I do a bulk of the recruiting. So I'm out on the road. Like, there's going to be 4 days, in 2 weeks in June. So it's 4, and then stay home for a week, and then 4 days gone. Same thing in July. So, it's a lot of sacrifice involved in it. So you got to make sure you have a good, support system, and people to understand that. But there's a lot more. It's a lot more than just, as is high school. It's a lot more than just, oh, we practice, we play, we hang out in the gym and recruiting a little bit. But it's awesome. Again, like I said, I think, for me, it's what I've always wanted to do. So, but you got to reach out. Like, you can't, there's no, the opportunities that you don't ask about, like, you're never going to get. So you got to be aggressive and really trying to pursue opportunities. Cause I mean, for every, the one, yes, it might take a lot of no's, on the front end. So you can't get discouraged by that.
Yeah. No, that's this great piece of advice. Griff, man, we appreciate you. Like I said, we try to keep it under an hour, man. We right at about 53 minutes. We get straight to the point. Like I said, when you get to talking, man, time just kind of fly. I think it was a lot of, knowledge dropped here, especially, you've been able to coach at different levels. So you can talk about it from, that perspective of Division 3, Division 2, Division 1. And then, just being a part of the portal process, like, you're in it. So, I think this is the first time we've really got a chance to really talk about these issues. And I think this is a big thing, with us being high school coaches, is like trying to explain that. And so, this kind of gives us an avenue to, tell our parents, share this podcast episode, and just, continue to kind of advance basketball. That's really why we love, doing the podcast, because it's really to advance basketball and try to, like, help this next generation kind of navigate the new way of recruiting and stuff. So, man, we definitely appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys having me. Like I said, I love it. I mean, this is it's a great thing because you guys would be surprised. Like even when we start recruiting kids, how many kids and parents like they just don't know. I mean, they just don't know. Like the misconception there was going around was like, oh, JUCO years don't count. Well, no, JUCO years count. Like
Yeah.
I mean, we've had kids we recruited like, I got 4 years of eligibility. Like, man, no, you don't like that because there was a waiver that went out a couple years ago, but it was only for that class.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's good though because I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there, so people got to be careful about what they listen to because I mean, it's rapidly changing. Like what it is today, in 2 months, I guarantee you, it's going to be totally different.
Yeah, yeah.
And Coach, just to hear you talk, man, I just want to say before we get off, I know you're passionate about it, man. I really hope that you are able to lead and start your own program one day. I think you're a passionate guy. I think you love the game, and I hope you get that opportunity to have your own college team and do your own thing, man. But right now you're assistant, but I definitely see in the future it's gonna happen for you, Coach. So I definitely hope it happens for you as soon as possible.
I appreciate it, man. Man, that means a lot. With this, it's crazy because like Rich said, like I've been doing it for 14 years, but I'm quickly reminded, by some of my OGs, like, man, you still a young pup in this thing. So my guy, Andre Gray, who's down in East Carolina, who been great to me. I work with him at Winston State. Dre's been all over the place. He's coached at more North Carolina schools than anybody, mostly Division I. But I mean, he tells me all the time, "Boy, you a young dog in this thing still." So you gotta just gotta keep going, man. But yeah, so I appreciate you guys for having me on.
Not definitely, man. This is R&R podcast, man, with Coach Justin Griffith of Presbyterian College, man. We out.
Yeah, here.